Welcome back to the Sharing English podcast, where we explore stories from the English-speaking world, spoken slowly and clearly for curious English learners like you. Let's get started. Hi everyone, I'm your host Freya. In our last episode, we talked about Martin Luther King Jr. and why he still matters today. But the civil rights movement was much bigger than one person or one speech. Today, we're going to look at the broader civil rights movement, the people involved, the different strategies they used, and why understanding this movement still matters today. The civil rights movement was a social and political movement in the United States mainly during the 1950s and 1960s. Its goal was to end racial segregation and discrimination against Black Americans and to secure equal rights under the law. At that time, many states, especially in the southern U.S., enforced segregation through what were called Jim Crow laws. These laws separated Black and white Americans in schools, housing, transportation, and public spaces. Black Americans were also often prevented from voting through unfair laws and intimidation. The civil rights movement focused on basic rights that many people today take for granted, like the right to vote, access to education, fair housing, and equal treatment under the law. One important thing to understand is that the civil rights movement was not only led by famous figures, it was built by ordinary people. Students, church members, teachers, factory workers, and parents all played key roles. Many people participated in protests, boycotts, and marches, even though doing so could be dangerous. Some were arrested, others lost their jobs. Some were physically attacked. These people were not looking to become famous. They wanted safer lives, better opportunities for their children, and basic dignity. Without their courage and persistence, the movement could not have succeeded. The civil rights movement was not one single organization or idea. Different groups believed in different strategies for creating change. Many activists supported nonviolent protest. This included sit-ins at segregated restaurants, boycotts of buses or businesses, peaceful marches, and acts of civil disobedience, deliberately breaking unjust laws to expose their unfairness. Others focused on legal action. Organizations like the NAACP worked through the courts to challenge segregation laws and discriminatory practices. These legal cases helped create lasting change at the national level. At the same time, some activists believed that progress was too slow. They argued for more direct action and self-defense. These voices reflected the frustration and anger many Black Americans felt after generations of injustice. While these approaches sometimes conflicted, they all came from a shared desire for freedom and equality. Martin Luther King Jr. is an essential figure in this history, but he was far from alone. Rosa Parks, for example, is often remembered as a tired woman who refused to give up her bus seat. She was a trained activist who had worked for years against segregation, and her arrest sparked the Montgomery bus boycott. Ella Baker believed strongly in grassroots leadership. She encouraged ordinary people, especially young people, to organize and lead rather than relying on one central figure. John Lewis became involved as a student activist and participated in the freedom rides and major marches. He was later elected to the U.S. Congress, where he continued fighting for civil rights up until just a few years ago. Malcolm X offered a very different voice. He spoke openly about racism, anger, and self-defense, and his views evolved over time. He represented feelings that many Americans felt but did not always hear in mainstream conversations. Bayard Rustin was a key organizer behind the scenes, including planning the March on Washington. Despite his enormous contributions, he was often excluded because he was openly gay. Together, these figures and so many more show that leadership came in many forms, loud and quiet, public and behind the scenes. The Civil Rights Movement led to major legal victories. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 made segregation illegal in public spaces and banned employment discrimination. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 protected access to voting for millions of Americans. These were historic achievements. However, not all problems disappeared. Inequality in housing, education, and voting access continues today. Understanding the movement helps explain why civil rights are still discussed, debated, and defended in the present. History shows us that rights can be expanded, but they can also be challenged. If you'd like to explore this history further, there are many accessible and engaging ways to do so. Movies like Selma focus on voting rights and peaceful protest, while documentaries such as Eyes on the Prize offer a powerful overview of the movement using real footage and interviews. These can be excellent listening and cultural practice for English learners. Museums also play an important role. If you find yourself in the U.S., take some time to visit the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is part of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. It offers an in-depth look at slavery, segregation, and the civil rights movement. The National Museum of American History, also part of the Smithsonian Institution, features important civil rights exhibits as well. Many of the Smithsonian museums are free to visit, making them accessible spaces for learning and reflection. And there are so many historical sites and museums throughout the country, which will also provide you with the opportunity to experience civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was not just one leader or one moment in time. It was millions of people working together to demand equality, dignity, and justice. Understanding this movement helps us better understand American history and the conversations still happening today. Now I'm curious, how do people in your country usually learn about social movements? Through school, movies, museums, or family stories? Which social movements have impacted your country today? Bye. Thanks for listening to the Sharing English podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share the podcast with a friend who's also learning English. You can find out more about me and the podcast at our website, www.sharing-english.com. New episodes of the Sharing English podcast are available weekly wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, let me know, what topics are you interested in hearing more about? Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep sharing English.